Great to have you on, Matt. Welcome.
David, thanks very much for having me.
Our pleasure. 180 was formally launched in January 2020, and it has since completed 30 acquisitions across several specialty areas. So I wanted to kick off this conversation by asking you, can you talk about the overall pace of growth and the strategic makeup of the organization?
Well, certainly the company was launched in January of 2020, as you point out. At that time, we had about 60 associates and relatively modest amount of net revenue associated with the business, about $14 million net revenue. Currently, we're on pace for 2022 to finish the year about $500 million in net revenue, and we expect our employee population to exceed 2,000 by year end. Business is set up under 5 basic pillars: contract binding, wholesale broking programs, specialty, and affinity. Affinity is the newest pillar of 180, and we expect by mid-year we'll be the leading affinity broker in the United States.
Thank you, Matt. And let's talk about specialty and specialized solutions. So first, what does this mean to you? And secondly, how has the specialty market shaped your strategy and structure for continued expansion?
Well, specialty really is at the core of our business model. We felt that at the inception of 180, we did not want to build a generalist broking operation. We wanted one that was focused on underwriting, focused on specialty, and creating value based on the deep level of specialization that each of the acquisitions and each of the divisions sort of brought to the table. We've been very, very pleased in the terms of the ecosystem that we're building out, in that it's creating a tremendous amount of value for our sub-producers, but at the same time, it creates an environment whereby we've got a lot of uncorrelated revenue coming into the organization. So you can imagine a point in time when you might see some rate erosion in the property casualty market, for instance, at a different cycle in the market. Well, we have warranty revenue that comes in. We have life and disability, lender-placed insurance business that comes in as well. We have a business in Canada that is in very many ways decoupled with the U.S. market. And so for that reason, we've got a variety and a volume of revenue that comes into the organization, and I think that allows us to create an ecosystem that can grow in just about any market cycle.
Great, thank you, Matt. And looking at the subject of M&A, for 180 intermediaries, 2020 was a record year, and you've been active as well in 2021 and this year. So how has your approach differed from other private equity-backed consolidators or aggregators out there? Well,
it's a great question. I mean, we're not a serial aggregator. You'll never see us in the top 10. We're very, very selective. One of the things that I note is that probably the last 6 or so transactions that we signed, we were not the high bidder, and so why do we win? We win on culture. Private equity has a return period and an expected return, a rate of return that's undifferentiated deal from deal. So while a transaction might have a different multiple, a different earnout period, a different structure, ultimately everyone's working off the same math, and they all need to get to the same rate of return for private equity. So I always tell folks that are considering selling the businesses, ultimately the deals are all very similar, but you've got to make the decision based on culture, because culture is what's going to be the driver for your employees into the future, and you've got to make a decision that's going to be one that's right for you as a seller, right for your employees. So culture, I think, is the key issue for a lot of these transactions.
And what is your view on current valuations, and how do you navigate a competitive market for M&A?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I think there's a lot of talk in the market about valuations, especially when we see a company that sold at a particularly high valuation. Here again, everyone's working off the same math, and ultimately the return has to be within the expectation of the private equity partners or the capital providers that are supporting the transaction. So that can come in a lot of different forms. It can come in the form of staff reduction, economies of scale, a lot of different ways that you get to that number. I think that there's a tendency, though, on the part of industry observers to look at valuations, especially the outsized valuations, and think it's a new normal. In fact, it's not. Most of the transactions that we are seeing are falling into a range of 8 to 11 is probably the sweet spot, which I consider to be quite reasonable given the current market. So the tendency to look at these mega deals with very, very large multiples, I think, is a little bit of a false signal.
Thank you, Matt. And we're having this conversation in the iconic Lloyds of London building at the centre of the London market. Talking now about the international opportunity that you see for 180. Having already made some initial steps to realise this, really, where do you see the opportunity and how is London playing a role?
Well, historically, London is a market focused on specialty, specialization, and in innovation. It's the cradle of innovation for our industry. And for 180, London plays a very, very important role in that we hold about 20 cover holder agreements with Lloyds and place a tremendous amount of business on an individual risk basis into the London market. So it is growing in terms of its importance, and Lloyds continues to partner with us in terms of innovative approaches to risk.
Thank you, Matt. And finally, just one question on talent. How are you positioning yourself to be a destination for talent, first of all, and what measures are there in place to ensure retention?
First and foremost, putting our employees at the center of each and everything we do. We value our employees. They need to feel supported. A quick story, during COVID, when COVID first hit, we didn't know what the implications to the business would be. We knew that our travel business would be impacted. We knew our entertainment business would be impacted, but we couldn't quantify what the economic impact of COVID was going to be. To that end, we got the top 200 employees in the organization together, and to a person agreed to take up to a 20% salary reduction so that we could signal to the employees that each and every one of them would have a job, their jobs were protected, and we could remove any sense of insecurity that might have been hanging over the organization, families, individuals, relative to what the future held. They knew they had a job, and I think that was important, that we signaled to them that any financial burden would be on the backs of management, not on the team. And that went a long way in establishing trust with the employee base. I believe, and our organization believes, that if you support your employees and create an environment where they love coming to work, they love their jobs, and there's a great sense of security and value in what they do, they'll bring it every day. They'll do a great job for our customers, and it's really by putting the employee at the center of everything we do that we create an organization that people really love to come to work and love to be a part of.
Great, and trust certainly is one of the secrets for success in the insurance industry. Matt, thank you very much for your presence here on the Insurer TV. It was great to speak to you.
David, thanks very much.